tamang kaalaman tungo sa malayang kaisipan. Ako po si Ferdy Isleta.
Ang kultura ay susi sa kadakilaan. Ako po si Annie Luis.
Isang oras lang ang kailangan. Ako po si Renena Peñas at ito ang
Padayon Presents the NCCA Hour.
Padayon, the NCCA Hour. Sulong na.
Ilan na ang namatay sa dagat at nahilo sa kanyang tinig. Ilan ang pumanaw sa yelo. Ilan sa hangin walang pakpak, paikot-ikot, paikot-ikot, paikot-ikot.
I love you, Cirilo. I will always love you.
Like the lotus, to break purely from mud into the grace of light, to lock in memory the music of the rubrics, love contemplates the world by nurturing the engine of nationhood.
He was so human, so knowledgeable of things and their significance. In his relationship with the fellows, I discovered that the workshop was more about finding your true worth as a person than about crafting a masterpiece. We're all brothers, Engel would say. The small plane soon arrived. Passengers lined up to board it. I stood up to say goodbye to Engel. He said, "Good luck." Then he shook my hand. I felt him press something into my palm. When I looked later, I saw it was a $50 bill. I walked quickly to the airplane. That way, he would not see me crying.
Katulad ng kanyang mga tula, ang kanyang buhay ay isang malayang taludturan kung saang binibigyang buhay ng wika ang saganang bukal ng imahinasyon, pag-asa, ang mga pangarap at kaganapan ang anumang posibilidad. Ang kanyang buhay na malalim na nag-uugnay sa mga titik ng salita, mga salita ng sinisintang wika at wika ng kanyang sining.
Soldiers throw it over enemy lines in the hope of igniting revolution, but get only a strain of Vivaldi and two boys chasing a dog in the field. Is this not the presumption of being, that we fear getting it all at the same time? How we would speak, how we would do.
Ang kanyang sining na siyang naging tunay na panitikang bantayo, di lamang ng mga Filipinong manunulat, kundi bantayo rin ng Filipinong kagalingan at kalinangan. Ating buklatin ang mga pahina sa imahinasyon ng isang epikong makata. Ang buhay ni Pambansang Alagad ng Sining, Cirilo F. Bautista. Makata, kritiko, nobelista, at guro. Si Cirilo F. Bautista ay isinilang noong 9 ng Hunyo taong 1941. Naiiba di lamang sa kanyang 4 na kapatid, kundi pati sa iba pang mga bata. Si Cirilo ay tahimik at mapag-isa, habang ang mga kabataang tulad niya ay naglalaro. Inilalaanan ni Cirilo ang kanyang oras kasama ang anumang babasahin na kanyang mahawakan. Sa kanyang isip, nabubuhay ang isang munti, ngunit malawak at makulay na daigdig. Isang mundo na puno ng hiwaga, ang mundo ng panitikan.
Lagi niyang sinasabi, mahirap sila. And he went to school, nakabakya. Ang maganda niyang istorya, yung umuulan at basa ang ground, yung kuya niya, binababa siya. You know, putting at the back, yes. Para huwag siya mabasa. To him, that was an act of love from his kuya.
Nagkikwento tungkol sa kabataan niya sa balik-balik, no, na nahirap daw sila, na yung sa bahay daw nila noon, pag kumakain sila, pinapauna yung tatay sa yung kuya kasi sila nagtatrabaho. So kung anong matira, yun ang paghahatian nilang mga mas nakabatang kapatid. Eh, hindi siya bitter. In fact, sumusulat siya about it. No? May mga essay siya na sinusulat niya yung mga yun.
Bago pa man ay maaga nang nahalina ang batang si Cirilo sa karikitan ng mga salita, sa kanilang kahulugan at mensaheng dala. Sa kanyang pakikinig at pagmamasid sa mga taong nag-uusap, kanyang masugid na pinagmamasdang nabubuhay ang bawat salita.
Let me read that part. Yeah, he says here, I started writing poems in grade school. That means the Legarda Elementary School in Manila. That's where he was born. He was born 1941. Perhaps my poems now exude the harsh realities of life.
Uhaw sa kaalaman, sa mga bagong salita at kaisipan, ang pag-ibig ni Cirilo sa pagbabasa ay siya ring naging ugat ng kanyang kahusayan bilang mag-aaral. Nagtapos bilang First Honorable Mention sa elementarya. Nagtapos rin si Cirilo bilang valedictorian sa mataas na paaralan ng MAPA.
At 9, I was selling newspapers. At 11, I was a bootblack.
Mahusay na mag-aaral. Mahusay at hinahangaan rin na propesor. Ang disiplina ng pagkatuto ni Cirilo F. Bautista ay isa sa mahahalagang katangian na kanyang matagumpay na nadala sa pagiging manunulat at naisalin sa pagtuturo. Kanya ring ipinamulat, di lamang sa henerasyon ng mag-aaral na sumailalim sa kanya, kundi pati na rin sa mga kabataang nagnanais maging manunulat, ang halaga ng disiplina at dedikasyon.
Napaka-istrikto. Halimbawa, siya ang thesis advisor ko. So mga 3 times ako major revision sa kanya. Mga 3 times na ako nasigawan. No? Sabi niya, ayusin mo yan, ayaw kong mapahiya. Ganyan siya.
He has his personality, which, he has his aura, says, don't mess with me. No? Medyo terror kasi talaga siya. Totoo naman.
As a teacher, I didn't find that he was a terror because he simply asked us to do our best. In fact, after graduation, I often sat in his classes, his poetry classes.
At sa totoo lang, si Dr. Bautista, napaka-pusong mamun siya pag ikaw ay isang manunulat. Pag nag-aspire ka na manunulat. Kahit na makulit ka, mahina ka, ang reaksyon niya lagi, kaya mo yan. Proud, proud, proud.
Pag sa workshop talaga, nag-ano siya nagbe-mentor Hindi, pwedeng personal, pwedeng as a group sa mentor yung ginagawa niya.
Very generous si Sir. No? So I remember, after ko nag-aral ng MFA sa Lasal, nag-volunteer ako sa isang NGO sa Palawan, and I stayed in Palawan for 3 years to edit a paper. Pinuntahan niya ako. Pinuntahan nila ako ni Ma'am Rose.
Sometimes I go with him if I have no other commitment. And he really does it so that he can do something for the writers. He believes that we have many creative people, and he wants to nurture whatever germ there is, of creativity there is in them.
Kumuha ng degree sa Ingles sa Universidad ng Santo Tomas. Dito kanyang natuklasan ang mga klasikong panitikan ng mundo. At mula rito, walang naging mas mahalaga pa para sa kanya, kundi ang hangarin na maging mahusay sa kanyang napiling sining.
Kasi ang gusto talaga niya mag-architecture sana or mag-fine arts. Kaso lang, mahirap daw sila. Wala siyang pambili ng materials. At least kung mag-literature siya, ballpen lang sa papel kailangan niya. No?
Katunayan, naglalakad lang siya minsan. Nagsimula siya bilang manunulat, kagaya ko sa The Varsitarian.
At that time, Cirilo was editor of the Varsitarian, UST, where he graduated magna cum laude.
There were 2 things that combined to count for the output that he has, and one of which was formal scholarship, and the other one was inventive imagination. So he had those 2 working for him, and those resulted in the works that he had put out. Imagine epics, short stories, and poems, plus the fact that he was also into painting. So,
kaya kung makita nyo, marami siyang mga paintings dyan kasi yung talagang first love niya is painting.
Napakarami niyang drawing o croquis at bunga ito ng kanyang paglalakbay. O minsan pag upo lamang sa isang sulok, ang dami niya na naiisip.
Abstractions yung kanya. Half of the time wala kaming ginagawa. Siya, kung hindi nagsusulat ng poem, nagdoodle ng yung artwork niya. So mahilig sa visual art.
Katunayan, merong isang chromatex. No? Ito ay exhibit na noon ay ginagawa sa Pinaglabanan Gallery na dinilipat sa Cultural Center of the Philippines.
Sa main hall, it was an exhibit of poets who liked to do visual expressions. So all of us did either painting or sculpture based on our poems or in relation to several poems.
Ganun siya kahusay. Hindi lang limitado siya sa panitikan o sa salita, kundi sa sining visual o imahe.
Matapos ang kolehiyo, inanyayahan ng isang kaibigan ni Cirilo sa St. Louis University sa lungsod ng Baguio upang magturo ng Ingles. Kasabay ng pagtuturo, siya'y kumuha at nagtapos bilang magna cum laude sa kanyang masteral degree sa panitikan.
College yan, sa Baguio, St. Louis. When he put out his first book, he was still in Baguio.
At dumiretso sa doctoral sa St. Louis University. Kaya meron siyang ugnayan sa Baguio. Siya ang kinikilalang ama ng Baguio Writers Group. No, na magpahanggang ngayon, ay kinikilala naman siya bilang tagapagtatag. Kahit siya ay hindi naman talaga taga roon.
Sa pagitan ng pagtuturo at pag-aaral ay patuloy rin sa pagsusulat si Cirilo. Isinumit ang mga likha sa iba't ibang pahayagan at magazine. Anong saya ang kanyang naramdaman nang mailathala ang kanyang isinulat sa Liwayway, ang magazine kanyang kinalakihan.
Si Cirilo Bautista ay hindi lamang makata, hindi lamang kritiko, kundi periodista. Katunayan, inaabangan ang kanyang kolum sa Panorama, ang lingguhang magazine ng Manila Bulletin na naglalabas ng kanyang mga prinsipyo sa hindi lang sa panitikan kundi sa pangkalahatan ay sa sining at kultura sapagkat kakaiba siya magsulat.
We would see in the literary pages of Free Press, graphic magazine, Panorama, ganyan na madaming malalakas.
Also, Cirilo was a journalist, in the sense that he had a regular column.
Sa St. Louis University kanyang makikilala ang binibini na hindi lamang pag-aalaya ng maraming tula, kundi magiging katuwang din habang buhay.
What did I feel when he dared to just come and ask me? Nothing. Basta, I just told him, it is fine because I like him, he's a very intelligent man. I like intelligent guys.
She's a very beautiful girl. When they met each other in Baguio, because that's where he first taught, si Cirilo, St. Louis University. Yeah. And she had many suitors, inggit sila when Cirilo came into the picture.
So when he was my husband, he was still my friend. He was basically still my friend, more than anything. The husband is just the fact that we got married, but we could still relate to each other, we respected each other, we could read each other's mind.
Rosemary is a fantastic, lady. Yeah, he took care of Cirilo when Cirilo was already not so mobile, in a wheelchair, and so forth.
Cirilo is a very quiet man, but even in his silence, he was eloquent. You can see how he feels, or maybe I can see how he feels and what he's thinking of, even in his silence. Because there are different kinds of silences, and when I was married to him, I already knew the different kinds of silences. One of disapproval, the other one is of, being comfortable. I feel like I was an extension of him, and he does not have to tell me anything. What he feels, I feel, and there's no need for words.
Sabi niya, maswerte ako kay Ma'am Rose mo kasi mabait siya, very understanding.
Because I loved him as a writer. I love him for what he is. Whatever he is, I love him. When I married him, I knew he was a writer. And I take that. And I like it. Not just take it, I like it. 112 words for Rosemary. 3 times a mother and still a wife. Moving in life's most troubled times. She marks her claim on memory. Rosemary, alive, aflame. Thus fixed in fate, wise in the works of loving, she multiplies the grace of this household, such that simple things bloom in plenitude. Flowers grow in her gestures, solitude retreats with her smile, and death in his cold exactitude accepts her compromise. She takes the beginning and end of days without rancor or regret, nor put a price on her healing words that shape our daily ways. How then do I sing the sweetness in her name with these poor lines, wretched poet as I am?
Matapos ang ilang taong pagtuturo at pag-aaral sa St. Louis University, siya'y bumalik sa Maynila. Lumipat si Cirilo sa De La Salle University upang magturo. Dito kanyang kinuha ang doktorado sa sining ng wika. at panitikan. Sa pare-parehong panahon, siya ay nakatanggap ng isang mahalagang pagkakataon upang magpalawig ng kahusayan sa pagsusulat. Ito ang fellowship grant para sa International Writing Program ng University of Iowa. Isang programang kanyang tinapos kung saan siya ay pinarangalan ng honorary degree. Sa kasalukuyan, siya ang natatanging Filipino nakatanggap ng prestihiyosong karangalan mula sa pinagpipitagang paaralang ito ng Estados Unidos.
And then later on, the distinctions he received, including scholarships, validated the fact that his skill in the English language was of a certain level. I'm speaking principally of his the fellowship he enjoyed in Iowa, the Iowa Creative Writing Program. No? Dalawang klase yan. Merong International Writing Program in Iowa. I think he enjoyed both. But si Cirilo stayed there, I think, for a year. So he actually really joined the workshop. You know. And he gained recognition from among the fellows, from the professors or the older people in Iowa who were poets. They were struck by his poetry.
Nanumbalik sa Pilipinas, nailathala ang kanyang unang librong naglalaman ng tula na nagwagi ng ikalawang pwesto sa Carlos Palanca Awards nung siya'y 27 taong gulang. Simula noon, ang mga panitikang obra na kanyang nilikha ay tuloy-tuloy na umani ng parangal hanggang kanyang makamit ang Palanca Hall of Fame Award taong 1995.
Bata pa siya noon. He was much younger. Immediately, I was impressed by his poetry. Kasi you can see that he had mastered the language. Not only precise, or he turned it into the way that he wanted it to be, meaning symbolic language. But he also had musicality in his writing. This is a very important element in poetry because poetry is language with music.
Si Cirilo, from the start, pinag-iisipan yung poetry. Hindi kung ano-ano lang. There was a concept, there was an ideation that he would explore with his lyricism in poetry. Sometimes lyricism, sometimes dramatic poetry in terms of his epic poems. No? Malalim yung kinukuha niya, tsaka yung sakop, yung larangan, yung scope. Even his experimental poems were deeper than most other what you call graphic poems, na yung minsan yung structure niya on a page, merong arte, ganyan. He would try his hand at that as well.
Hindi siya yung tula na para sa lahat. I mean, para sa lahat siya, pero hindi siya ito lang mabilis maintindihan ng lahat. Kailangan talaga mag-isip. So, sang-ayon ako kay Cripusson sa kanyang pananaw.
Bagamat mas kilala sa pagsusulat sa wikang Ingles, bibihira ang kagaya niya na pwedeng magpatentero sa wikang Filipino. Mabibilang mo lamang sa daliri sa Pilipinas ang nakakapagsulat ng mahusay sa Ingles at Filipino.
Malayo sa tradisyonal na anyo ng panulaang nakagisnan, ang makabago at makatang estilo ni Cirilo Bautista ay malalim na tumatagos sa iba't ibang dimensyon ng tula. Tumatahak sa iba't ibang posibilidad ng mga salita at lumalanda sa masining na diskurso ng iba't ibang paksaing na hihimbing sa kamalayan.
Perhaps, what he has illustrated is the Filipinos' skill, consummate skill, with the language that we have borrowed from our colonizer. Now, not only have we borrowed it, but we have made it our own to a point that we can say, I'm writing in your language, but now I'm expressing myself in a way that you have never been able to understand. And in that sense, I'm no longer a colonized artist, but I'm free from you. That is one of the important things that Cirilo has done. How to liberate a colonial language that he had borrowed or had taken, from its history, from its own history.
If you are a lover of language, if you are mahilig sa tula and kahit hindi tula, mas mahirap maintindihan, mas maganda. Kasi ang hinihingi ng poetry is you stop and slow down. Sinasabing quality ng tula ni Cirilo na mahirap intindihin is that napakayaman ng laman ng tula niya. Yung paglubid niya ng mga salita ay hindi ganun ka dali.
His poetry is not, you might say, easy reading. Yeah. You have to really go inside the poem, you might say. You have to have a figurative sense of language. Yeah, so it can be very difficult.
Ang isang napansin ko sa kanyang mga tula, particular ang mga epiko niya, hindi mo alam ang susunod na linya. Hindi mo mahuli. At sa tingin ko, ang husay ng isang Cirilo Bautista ay kung paano niya na itatago ang susi na ipapahanap sa kanyang mga mambabasa.
Makapangyarihan ngunit mapagkumbaba, matapang ngunit malumanay, maingat ngunit mapangahas. Ang mga katha ni Cirilo Bautista ay kaganapan ng isang intelektual na balintunay na kumakawala mula sa normal na pamantayan sa paggamit ng wika.
Ba't kailangang basahin? Kasi isa siyang hindi siya basta makata lang eh. Isa siyang historian. Inilalahad niya yung kanyang perspective tungkol sa nangyayari sa history natin.
Napaka-visionary niya sa poet, no? Siya talaga yung may vision kung ano ang Pilipinas, ano yung pagiging Pilipino.
Our poets, whoever they are, including Cirilo, they are our own, with scholars of course. No, I will not include the other artists and scholars. Our writers are our own best critics and interpreters of our own culture, our own history.
He's a primary figure in Philippine literature. And I would say not just contemporary literature. His work will stand the test of generations of appreciation, as evidenced by the 3 volumes of poetry criticism, or more of an anthology, done by Hemino Abad. 1 volume ends with Cirilo, the generation of Cirilo.
Para iangat mo ang iyong kaisipan to the level that he is in, you're doing yourself a favor if you do that. Because if you just read poems which have no challenge, you're just there. But he can bring you up to a certain level and make you think and make you admire the abstract.
Mga pagkilala, parangal, at mga gawad na di mabilang na nakamit ni Ginoong Cirilo Bautista sa paglipas ng maraming panahon bilang ipinagdiriwang na makata, nobelista, sinusubaybayang periodista, iginagalang na kritiko at minamahal na guro. Ang lahat ng ito'y bunga ng kanyang wagas na pagmamahal na tapat na inalay para sa sining ng panitikan. Ang hiwaga at ligaya na dala ng mga salita na bumibihag sa kanya ay siya ring nagpapalaya at literal na nagbibigay kahulugan sa kanyang buhay. Higit pa sa mga tropeo, medalya at mga plake na patunay ng kanyang henyo at kahusayan bilang manunulat, kritiko, guro at paham ng akademya ay ang pamanang legasiya na kanyang iniwan sa larangan ng panitikan. Mga obrang nagpapanatiling buhay at nangangalaga sa mga alaala ng kanyang bayan. Kanyang patuloy na ilinalapit at ipinapaalala sa mga Filipino mga Filipinong alaala na kanyang itinatak sa mundo.
I have a favorite poem by Cirilo Bautista. Yeah. And he calls it Address to Himself. Yeah. You know, Morse poetry is parang secretly autobiographical. Secretly. Because the poet has no choice. He draws from his own life experience.
Yung address to himself, kasi di ba nasabi niya parang nag-wrestle with words, no? Yung poet, no? Address to himself, parang kinakausap niya sarili niya, no? Na kahit na mahirap magsulat, no? Kahit na walang pera sa pagsusulat, kailangan pa rin natin magsulat.
Because it tells us what he thinks about poetry, what he thinks about language. Language is the supreme invention of the imagination. So language and imagination are actually one. And therefore, the sense for language is the basic poetic sense.
May tula siyang patalim, yung paborito kong tula niya, no? Tungkol siya sa mag-asawa na nagsasaksakan araw-araw. No?
Dinefine niya or nilarawan niya yung paano ba talaga magmahal. Yung tunay na pagmamahal na sinasabi niya na nagkakasugatan na kayo, nagkakasaksakan na kayo, and in the end, masaya pa kayo. So, ganun yung pag-ibig.
Ang pinaka-paborito kong tula kay Cirilo, which is mahaba, although I can read a short excerpt, is ang tula na ang pamagat ay Rizal at La Trinidad, A Windy Day. Yan. Ibig sabihin, yung tula na ito, it depicts Rizal talking to himself on a mountain top, which is La Trinidad in the mountain province. And the whole poem, I think, is a recounting of a personal view of Rizal over what happened, over Philippine history.
So yun talaga epic, yun yung history, kasaysayan ng Pilipinas, no, sa pamagitan ng epiko, no, tatlong epiko. No? So, sina Magellan, di ba, sa The Archipelago, yung unang libro, no? Paano nagsimula ang Philippine Archipelago? No?
The Archipelago is the first in the trilogy of St. Lazarus. Yeah, lalo yun. You know, but the thing with Cirilo is, it's not only personal. He read our history, yung mga Spanish, he read them. Yeah, he read them, and so he draws from them. Yeah, and that's why, that's part of the difficulty, because we have not read his sources. That will be part of the difficulty.
Some of the lines then, you commit to memory, all that this island fathered, that is all, or something about Rizal speaking to Josephine, you know. Naging reading matter ko yan every night na you get impressed by the lyricism, the music of his lines, the depth of his celebration of Philippine history, parang with the point of view of Rizal, and all that, malalim.
And then yung pangalawa, Telex Moon, no? Yun naman yung love story ni Jose Rizal sa ni Josephine Bracken, no? Kasi isa sa mga hinangaan ni Cirilo Bautista, si Jose Rizal din. At yung pangatlo, yung Sunlight and Broken Stones. So, yan yung madugo nating kasaysayan bilang bansa.
My favorite work is probably this, in many ways. Why? It's a collection of lyric poems, right, about all sorts of things. Mortality, transcendence, about the people, about us.
At higit sa lahat, ang kanyang paglinang at pag-akay sa panibagong henerasyon ng mga Filipinong manunulat patungo sa mga dakilang layunin na nagpapahalaga higit pa sa sariling mga adhikain, tungkulin na kanyang matapat na ginampanan.
It was Cirilo Bautista who took the initiative, to gather us together. The original group, or founders, if you might say, of the Philippine Literary Arts Council, that was September 8, 1981. So, but we thought there should be one more outlet for the poets. And that's why the following year, 1982, we came out with Caracoa 1. It was a war vessel.
And that started our bonding sa plak. All the more na naging parang etsapuera kami sa gobyerno, we continued with Caracoa. It became very, very intimate, that group, very strong.
The first issue were poems by us, but subsequent issues, we invited other poets to contribute to Caracoa. That lasted for about 30 issues.
Advocacy talaga ni Sir, marami siyang tinulungan sa regional writing, di ba? So, nasa sentro siya, nasa Metro Manila siya, base. English writer pa siya primarily, tapos sa De La Salle University pa siya nagtuturo. Pero kapag summer, lumalabas siya ng Manila para tulungan yung mga batang manunulat tulad ko. No?
Bago pa man nagkaroon ng Centennial Literary Prize, nauna na si Cirilo Bautista sa pagsulat ng epiko na bago o makabago. Kung di ako nagkakamali, baka siya pa nga ang nakaisip o naka-impluwensya sa mga organisador ng Centennial Literary Prize na ang premyo ay 1 milyong piso noong 1998 bilang pagdiriwang ng ikasandang anibersaryo ng sentenaryo ng kalayaan ng Pilipinas na isa rin sa nagwagi.
Isang dakilang bantayog ng Filipinong panitikan, dakilang kritiko ng Filipinong kamalayan, dakilang makata ng Filipinong diwa, at dakilang alagad ng Filipinong kalinangan.
So if you ask me, did I know he was leaving during those times? I did not know until I went to the hospital. And even when I was in the hospital, I was hoping, because we go to the hospital often, and I was hoping it is just one of those things that there can be a remedy for him. But then the problem was he could not breathe.
He's very kind in spite of the fact that he's already at the peak of his career, almost national artist for literature. He found time to mentor us, especially in our poetry. He's been very inspiring.
Alam mo, malaking ambag na yun, tumula siya eh. Isa sa mga katangian niya ay magaling siya magturo. Yung hindi mo maintindihan, pagkatapos ng session na yon, naunawaan mo. So isa siyang magaling na mahusay na teacher.
Well, the one advice that he had is there should be no bar at all for a writer to write. You should keep on writing, and that's always what he said.
But very simply, his entire body of work, the entire corpus of literature, which is very, very substantial. No? I would think he must have written or authored at least 20 or more books, no? Volumes of poetry, fiction, English and Filipino. That would be the main contribution. It'll stand the test of time. No? Eventually, siguro, certain literary fads might render some of his poetry outdated in a sense, no? Yung style, but it might come back again, ganyan. But his lyric poems, malalakas pa rin eh. And that would be the main contribution.
I think of him, in the words of Crip Yuson, dakilang tao. Yeah, dakilang tao. He cannot stomach the misery of other people because of the government, corruption, and things like that. No. That's why he's an angry poet.
He was a great artist, there's no doubt about that. Like I said, perhaps the greatest English poet we ever had. It will be very difficult for any generation of poets in English to do or to surpass what Cirilo has done. That's for sure.
he makes them aware of who they are and what they are and make them feel proud of who they are by his writings. And he also educates by, like the archipelago, he educates people on what they are as Filipinos. Parang he gives the identity of the Filipino dignity.
Siya yung ultimate poet, no, of the Philippines. So, siguro kung meron tayong kandidato for Bell Prize, no, siya yun. He's not only a Filipino poet, but also the poet of the world.
How hard I have made life for you, Cirilo, who wrestle with words to free my mind. Your various battles you do not know poise at me the same buckle, the same wind that eagles in anger hotly ride on.
Yet buckles you never break, though blind. At times you pine and pine for beauty gone. Never take the same courage, mon ami. Wisdom and the past are never one. But learn to distrust language that we in constant dreams deem only fact. Kill it in seduction of heraldry.
So eagle-like you may invent your act. Then think you walk in a world of thrall, where beauty walks too, but does not look back, crossing the foggy fjords of the skull.
Cirilo F. Bautista, Pambansang Alagad ng Sining sa Panitikan. Sagisag Kultura ng Pilipinas.
Ako ay Pilipino, lahing matapang, lahing matalino, nalakbay ko ng mundo.
Walang unos o bagyo sa aking gugupo, lahi ng matatag. Ako ay Pilipino.
Ako ay Pilipino.
Ako'y makadiyos.
Ako ay Pilipino.
Ako'y makatao, saan man makarating, sino mang makapiling.
Aangat ang galing
habang buhay,
Filipino.
Filipino.
Ikot sandaang mga isla, magkakahiwalay ngunit nagkakaisa. Tahanan ng aming lahi, mga pook na aming ninimiki.
Puno ng kasaysayan, puno ng hiwaga.
Sa mga lugar na ito nakatanim ang ugat ng pagka-Pilipino.
Ako ay Pilipino. Ako'y makadiyos. Ako ay Pilipino. Ako'y makatao, saan man makarating, sino mang makapiling. Aangat ang galing habang buhay, Pilipino. Pilipino. Kami ang lahing kayumanggi, mula sa bughaw na langit at dagat. Mula sa pulang animoy dugo, hinalo sa dilaw na araw at bituin. Yan ang kulay ng katatagan, yan ang kulay ng kagitingan, buong tapang na sumisigaw. Yan ang Pilipino. Ako ay Pilipino. Ako'y makadiyos. Ako ay Pilipino. Ako'y makatao, saan man makarating, sino mang makapiling. Aangat ang galing habang
selebrasyon. Pagdiriwang ang aming kasiyahan, ipinagbubunyi ang kalayaan. Pinupuri ang katapangan, kapanganakan, pag-iisang dibdib. Pagbabalik bayan o talino ng tatagisan, ipagdiwang natin ang pagiging Pilipino.
The Filipino year is marked by ritual and tradition. In the season of Dayaw, we will relish the preparations and celebrations that have defined our many cultures. What do we as Christians, as animists, as Islamic Filipinos value most? And how do we mark our years to show our collective aspirations? Tayo'y magdiwang at magpasalamat as we mark the milestones of the Filipino year. This is Dayaw, our knowledge, our pride. The destruction of Marawi City is a national tragedy that challenges the entire Filipino race, if not all of humanity. In the destruction of a great city, so much stands to be erased of a vibrant and dynamic Islamic culture. To understand the instinct of survival that keeps the Maranao culture so vibrant, we must understand Maratabat. It has been described as a mental construct, a code of personhood, a way of being and thinking that has guided the Maranao. Roughly translated, this code of personhood is founded on self-pride, or pride in one's being. This being is not a selfish individual entitlement. Instead, its foundations are found in Islam, as well as the traditions that have been deemed honorable and worth emulating. The value system that is Maratabat extends from the way an honorable Maranao will conduct himself in public and in private, to the convictions that ground a person, the way it affects families and clans, inspiring both loyalty as well as blind devotion.
Maratabat is a broad term for a Maranao society. That is an ideology. That is a social psychology of the Maranao. The meaning of Maratabat, according to Spanish point of view, is amor propio. But in our case, that's not only the meaning. It might be, depends. You are depending your life, depending your family and your society. If there is somebody that will come to destroy you. Another is pride, that you do not like yourself to be put down. Another thing is, if you have the right being transgressed by other people, you have to protect that right. Because if you are protecting that right, people will help you because you are exercising Maratabat. If you do not have the right in transgressing other people, nobody will support you because that is not a Maratabat. In other words, Maratabat is a kind of ideology that protects the Maranao against any foreign transgression.
Rebuilding may restore structures, but will these structures accommodate and reflect the unique aspects of the Maranao culture? Will the new Marawi, if and when it rises, respect the traditions of a historic city now erased? These are the questions that the Dayaw team set out to answer as we visited Marawi. It was an auspicious time. The holy feast of Ramadan was coming to an end. Eid al-Fitr, the sacred festival that ended Ramadan, was about to be celebrated. How were the Maranaos coping? And how was their Islamic faith kept burning, a beacon of hope and resilience in the ruined city?
Lola po namin, si Umi, sabi niya, tumawag yung kapatid niya o pinsan ba yan? Yan, tapos sinabing may dadating daw na ISIS.
Nung pag-uwi ko, wala akong masagyan lahat ng sakyan ng mga motorcycle, yung namamasagda mga pidigab. Nilagad nung hanggang bahay, nilagad ko.
Natakot kasi baka yun na yung huling ko, parang hindi ko na makikita yung pamilya ko. Siyempre nalungkot kasi parang hindi mo kasi nakakala na yun yung mangyayari sa bayan mo.
I know that the cause of the problem in Marawi is not originated from the Christian. Remember that the one who started the war is multi-ISIS. It is not the Christian who started. So in other words, the one to be blamed are the ISIS and the multi who started. We are not blaming the government. We are not blaming our neighbors. We are blaming our relatives who started the war.
Ang taong may anak dito sa Marawi, hindi niya mapasukan. At day 1, day 2, day 3, day 5, na no entry na yung Marawi kasi lahat lumalabas, hindi makapasok yung sasakyan. So the horror na hindi mo alam kung yung anak mo ay crossfire dyan sa highway, sa bahay, sa war zone. So you don't know na yung nakatira ka doon, yung nasa labas ka, hindi mo ma-rescue yung kamag-anak mo na nandun sa location na yon. So may mga katawan na nandun nakalupaypay na yung city deputy of police, yung katawan niya nandun na sa day 1 fire. Kasi may parang may rage na nangyari na, galit yung mga lalaking yon, may napapatay na sila pag hindi mo sila tinutugunan, sinasagot. Kahit Muslim, Kristiyano, na who will go out of their ways. First responders sa Kapitolyo, sinecure nila yung Kapitolyo para hindi pasukan din ng multi-group at saka naging evacuation center agad. Yung mga taong walang mapuntahan, hindi makalabas, dyan sila sa Kapitolyo. So kami second responders sa Iligan City, nag-form kami ng isang location site where people can pass by, report kung may stranded silang kamag-anak. Tapos itatawag namin sa sundalo na may stranded po dyan sa location na yan, sa Ground Zero, War Zone, or sa Marawi itself, and sa MSU. So kailangan po ng sasakyan. So naging para kaming hotline dyan sa Iligan. We were connecting authorities to people kasi natatawagan tayo. Nag-Facebook campaign kami, nag-Facebook upload na please inform us kung may mga kailangan ipatulong sa inyo. Access to ambulance, access to an office na pwede silang magbigay ng mag-erase ng kanilang kailangang gawin. feeling ko hindi pa rin nakakabalik yung loob ko dito sa bahay na to. Naririnig ko yung mga iyak sa ulo ko ng mga taong hindi nakabalik sa war zone. So, physically, nandito yung katawan, pero emotionally, mentally, parang wala ako dito. Kaya, madalas pa rin ako nasa Iligan, madalas ako sa labas ng Marawi, kasi alam kong marami pang hindi nakakabalik. Physically, nandito kami ng pamilya, mami ko. Pero yung family ko na my son, nag-aaral na sa Iligan, doon naka-enroll. So picking up the pieces, lahat ng ninakaw sa amin, yung kwartong ginulo-gulo, yung CCTV na wala kaming recording kung anong nangyari. Nakatingin ako sa inyo ngayon, Ramadan ngayon, kung sinong nagnakaw ng gamit ng mga Maranao. Jewelry, sasakyan, titulo. Buti kaya niyong matulog sa gabi. Ibalik niyo yan sa amin. Alam namin nasa kwarto niyo yon. Yung lahat ng nasa kwarto namin na dinala niyo sa kwarto niyo, ibalik niyo sa amin. Kasi alam namin nandyan lang kayo.
Dayaw had visited to Gaya, the village of artisans, once before the war began. What we found was a village of Maranao artisans who carried on the proud tradition of courtly art, using time-honored techniques. They spoke in the visual language of Okir, the grammar of arabesques and curves that has defined Maranao art. But with war, would there still be artists left creating? How has war changed their character and the nature of their art? Or has a need to survive replaced a need to create beauty?
Unang pagkagawa nila mga ISIS, nasa Padayon ako. Doon ako mismo sa Padayon. Narinig namin doon na balita na nasa Maratabat, nagkagulo doon. Nagbarilan yung mga ISIS at saka mga sundalo. Yung asawa ko, sabi niya, umalis na tayo dito. Magbago tayo. Sabi ko, hindi pa. Kasi wala pang order ng mayor at saka yung gobernador. Nung ninta namin ng balita. Tapos hanggang gabi, malakas na putokan. Nung kinabukasan, umorder ng gobyerno na bukas ng mga alas 6, dapat makaalis na lahat ako doon. Kasi hindi na mapigilan yung mga itim, mga ISIS, hindi na mapigilan. Saka yung mga sundalo. Ay, yung mga pamilya ko, pinaalis ko sila. Tapos yung mga manugang ko, lahat ng pamilya ko, lahat sila umalis, nagpunta sila ng Iligan. Ako namang nagpaiwan ako. Kasi akala ko yung mga gamit namin sa bahay, hindi ko na iiwanan. Dati wala nag-aaral na medyo ang edad niya, mga 45, wala nag-aaral. Nung paunti-unti sila na nawawala, may nawala sa akin, namamatay, paunti-unti. Ayun, may nakaisip na yung mga bata pa, mag-aaral na kasi mawawala yung produkto. Kung hindi sila nag-aaral, pag naubos sila, wala na makapagtur sa kanila. Yung bago mag-aaral, mahirap na to eh. Kung hindi ka, yung isip mo na magaling ka gumawa, hindi mo masusunod. Kaya kung konti lang nakapag-aral dito, hindi lahat ng taga rito to gaya na sabi niya marunong. Hindi. Pag marunong na, nasisira yung mga brush. Pag hindi na natuto marunong.
Sino naman ang hindi nahirapan? Lahat apektado. Yung halimbawa, yung market namin, medyo huminto. Yung pagta-transport namin, ang hirap. Bago ka makarating sa Iligan, ikot ka pa. Kasi hindi na mapuntahan ng Marawi. Pero yung Marawi na yan, kung sa apekto, grabe. Lahat talaga naapektuhan. Nawala ba yung... Talagang bagsak yung market namin dito. Bagsak na bagsak. 0%. Walang galaw. Sa akin, talagang hindi pwede ito hinto. Kailangan talaga tuloy-tuloy. Kung sa akin lang, kasi may market din ako sa halimbawa sa Manila. Talagang hindi pwede hinto. Ang problema lang kasi dito medyo matagal eh. Actually, yung bata ko yan, pinasa ko yan sa kanya. Taga Marawihan. Yan. Tingnan mo yung damit ng Marawi. Yan, tinuruan ko siya mag-ano dyan para nung kasi nakatira sila dito, tinuruan ko niya. Ito talagang mana ito sa mga ninuno namin. Paano namin ito magawa kung hindi namin nakita sa kanila? Nakita namin sa kanila, kung interesado ka, matutunan mo. Pero kung hindi ka interesado, hindi mo matutunan. Minana namin ito sa kanila.
Anak-laki.
Sino na?
Sulatan sama dinding, sulatan sa kawain gitu. Paano dong? Okay. Dito na yung sisi. Paano gitu dia atang namin nagakana? Pero miyati ya. May kaupan sa akong yung buta. 40 puray didakan sa mana.
Oo, na-trauma ako kasi kagagaling ko pa lang ng Marawi, kapapanganak, doon kasi ako nanganak. Tapos, nung ilang araw na umuwi kami dito, narinig ko na nangyari sa Marawi. Kahit pa paano naman, nakakaraos kami. Apektado lang kami dun sa kabuhayan.
Takot kami kasi narinig namin yung mga putok sa Marawi. Siyempre, baka maapektado kami dito. Kaya yung iba, nakatigil na. Baka may akala nila ba madamay ito. Yung iba, tatapon na naman. Akala nila madadamay itong gaya. Tinutuloy namin yan para hindi maputuloy yung namin, pangbuhay namin. Pero nahirapan kami. Dahil yung mga namin sa Marawi, mga suki namin, nawala sila. Hindi sila makasupply sa amin. Siyempre, nawala sila eh. Iba-ibang napuntaan. Kaya nahirapan kami dito gumawa. Walang maka-finance, ganun. Yung mga suki namin, mga bayar namin, nawala sila.
Itong bakal ng ninuno namin, nadama ito sa ground zero. Tinama ng bala. Pero pasalamat pa rin ako kasi hindi nawawala yung bakal na ninuno namin. Bumalik siya dito sa shop. Pero i-repair ko ito, bumalik siya sa original.
na-trauma sila, of course, no? Kasi na, bago sa kanila yung nahuhulog na bomba. No? Although yung barilan, okay lang sa kanila kasi medyo sanay sila. Pero yung talaga nahuhulog na mga bomba, yun na talaga ang parang hindi bago sa kanila. No? So, na-trauma sila kasi sinasabi nila ako na, Sir, kailangan nating umalis. No? Kasi iba na itong naririnig namin.
Nangyari yung siege, parang sabi nila mawawalan ang Marawi. So ang sabi nila, mawala man ang Marawi pero ang kultura natin ay hindi mawawala dahil nasa sa atin na yan. Kapag nakikita nila yung mga sinasayaw namin, yung mga Maranao po na doon nag-evacuate, yung mga Maranao na nandun po. So parang masaya sila na yung kultura is nandyan pa rin, dala-dala namin. So, proud po ako na isa po ako sa mga tao na pinapakita sa mga kapwa ko na yung kultura namin is andito pa rin po, hindi pa rin po nawawala.
Faith, they say, can build cities. Marawi may have been ruined, but the strong Islamic faith of its artisans and people made this year's Eid al-Fitr celebrations all the more resonant because of the struggles they'd been through, because of the greater challenges that they were facing.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, walillahil hamd. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, walillahil hamd.
Ramadan, during the fasting time, is a very important way for the Muslims, for the Maranao, for the Maguindanao, to contemplate, to meditate, to examine their lives, to examine their purposes, and think about their work, think about their art, and think about how they can improve themselves as not only as Muslims, but as Maranaos and as Filipinos. And this is the way for them to really even cultivate, no? They can continue developing their crafts and they continue refining their art. During Ramadan, you can really refine your inner self, achieve a higher level of understanding, a higher level of creativity, and this is expressed in Maranao art.
Isipin niyo, yung paggawa dito, mga 200 years, ginagawa ng agong ito. Yung ako, ikasampu na ako na apo, gumagawa ng agong. Kaya nila sinasabi na huwag niyo po iwanan kasi Ito ang tunay na logo na mga Muslim.
Hinihiling namin sa mahal na presidente na yung mga pag-aari ng Maranao dito sa Marawi City, sila na po ang iparihab sa kanilang lupain. Dahil yan ay talagang minana namin sa aming father. Tapos yan lang po ngayon ang huling nakikita namin na napag-iwanan sa amin.
We only have today and tomorrow. So, tulungan nyo na lang kami na maging Pilipino ulit. Maging tao ulit.
One does not need to be a Muslim to feel with the Maranaos and the tragedy that has befallen them in their city. One does not need to understand Maratabat to feel their resilience, their faith, their hope. One does not need to understand art or okir or Maranao culture to see how the artisans value beauty, how they continue to commit to its creation, how their work becomes not only a means of survival for their bodies, but for their spirits and their enduring will. One needs only to feel with them as Filipinos and as human beings. Marawi will rise again, not because it will be rebuilt by outsiders, but because the Maranao themselves will carry their city and their culture wherever they go. I wish that for all Filipinos, that whatever our struggles, our convictions, our aspirations, we always would be bearers of Dayaw, our knowledge, our pride.